The layered stress model. Layered stress model is one of the major lenses that I look at dog training through, right? Layered stress model says that every dog is born with a threshold for their level of stress. And when their layers of stress reach that threshold, they have whatever their trip is. Like if they're gonna roll over and pee, or if they're gonna bite you, if they're gonna freak out, whatever they're gonna do it when their layers of stress hit their threshold, right? And some people call it trigger stacking. That's a common term that people have used before, right? But the thing is, I've kind of broken this for clients into this kind of oversimplified version. Like anything that causes stress can be on the layers of stress. But the way that I make this little cartoon for clients to stick on their refrigerator, to kind of have in their head when they're training their dog, we broke it into these basic levels, right? The bottom layer is health. And the health layer of stress is one of those things that it's kind of like, it's irritating a little bit when you start talking about it, because it's kind of like when you call IT and they go, is it plugged in, is it turned on? And you're like, yeah, right? No nasal left, right? So that's a stupid question, you know, it kind of irritates you, but the truth is, if it's not plugged in, it's not turned on, it's not gonna matter. Like nothing that you do is gonna work on that computer if it's not plugged in, it's not turned on, right? And the same thing with dogs. If your dog has a thyroid dysfunction, no amount of cookies, no amount of corrections is gonna do things to drastically modify the behavior in that dog. If it's health-related, disease-related, it's not gonna help, right? We kind of naturally understand acute conditions when we talk about behavior issues related to health. Like for example, if anybody's ever handled their dog and their dog's never bitten them, and then one day you're handling your dog and it bites you, and then you find out it's got a thorn in its foot, you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. I now understand. It's got a broken leg. That makes sense that you bit me, your leg is broken, I was jacking with your leg, you bit me. Okay, that makes sense. But we don't really give any credence to the idea of chronic conditions, if that gets in your head, right? Raise your hand if you've ever considered your dog having a headache. Oh, go screw yourself. Look at all you. That gets a much better reaction when it's not trained professionals, so shut up. All right. Dude, wait, like headaches are caused by vasoconstriction. Your dog has blood vessels that gets headaches. And I'm not saying, like, don't get me wrong, the worst use of the layered stress model is an excusing behavior. I'm not going, oh, well, he bit the mailman because he has a headache. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying excuse bad behavior because of that. That's the worst expression of understanding the layered stress model. Layered stress model, the best expression of a layered stress model is in the idea of understanding a predictive element to it, right? Like if your dog typically can hold place, but it's difficult for them to hold place, and your plan is that tonight the stressful neighbors are coming over for a dinner party and your dog is gonna hold place, that's the plan, they're gonna hold place, they're ready for it. But then you see like, they've had a little bloody stool this morning or whatever, they got hurt their leg playing fetch this morning. Maybe tonight's not the night to ask them to do that because that health layer of stress is gonna be jacked up. And it might not be jacked up by much, but it's gonna be jacked up a little bit, right? So then the next layer up is this, like you gotta get health squared away. Next layer up is lifestyle. Lifestyle says that every dog is born with this natural lifestyle that will make it complete and whole, right? And you're born the same way, right? Like how many people totally are like made whole by sitting in an office cubicle all day? Right? Like, man, shrinks will tell you, get out, spend time in the woods, spend time in the sun, spend time playing, spend time socializing with other people. The reason they tell you to do that stuff is because that's moving. All right. All right, this is a test. The reason they tell you to do that is because the more time you spend out of congruence with your biology, the less happy and the less healthy and the less sane you're gonna be, right? So dogs, if you turned off all the power and there were no people and there was no antifreeze and there was no cars and we didn't have to worry about anything, name activities dogs would do. Well, what would they do? Man, they'd hunt, right? They'd hunt stuff, they'd cover miles, they'd hunt, they'd kill things, they'd fight, they'd mate, right? Like they're not gonna finger paint murals. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what they would do. But what do we let them do? Like what are their lives now? You know what I mean? Like maybe we walk them a couple times a day, so one of those 5 activities we kind of sort of halfway meet. You know, maybe we throw some food down, feed the chickens, throw the food out, and they don't even eat out of a bowl, so they get to scavenge a little bit, so we're kind of sort of maybe one of them. You know what I mean? But like we're not giving them places to put this biological fulfilling activities. They're not getting those things that like make them whole. Do you know what I mean? And I was a good example of this. Layered stress model is beautiful for me because I was a pain in the ass kid. I was a horrible, is that me? You couldn't tell this by looking at me now, but I was a difficult child. You know? Like I really was. It was bad. I hit a lot of people inappropriately. It wasn't good. Do you know? And until somebody found me and said, you know what you need to do? You need to put that in a gym. Took me to a boxing club, took me to a karate club, and said, this is where you put that. Until they did that with me, I was a horrible, horrible individual, man. I mean, I had like diagnoses about all the things that were wrong with me, intermittent explosive disorder and all this kind of stuff, you know? Terrible person, couldn't get along with anybody. And now, those activities that somebody gave me, they said, look, you want to hit something, hit that. You like to struggle, pick that weight up. You like to do those things, do these things in this context. Turned me into a very good person. Like now, I'm calm, I haven't hit anybody all weekend. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm a good dude. I get along, I pay my taxes and stuff. I haven't been to jail in a long time. Do you know? So, it's good, but it's the same thing, right? So I think you have to find activities. We can't take your dogs hunting. Obviously, you can't take your dog hunting. I mean, not obviously, like you can. Some of you may, but like most of your clients, they're not gonna take their dog hunting. You're not gonna let the dog fight. None of us are pointy boot lady that lets the chow hump her foot for obedience training. Like you're not gonna let your dog mate as a training obedience reward or what, hopefully not, you know? So it's like, there's a lot of biologically appropriate stuff that we're not gonna give them access to. So what we have to do is we have to try to find surrogate activities. T's are apparently hard also. So you have to find surrogate activities that are gonna fulfill your dog biologically. And I don't just mean make them tired, and I don't just mean make them happy. I mean make them literally whole, like emotionally as beings, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna lower their layers of stress by having these activities. Like when you go do your thing, if you're into, ooh, that was close. If you, ooh, how many minutes was that? I almost let one go, right? If you're into pottery, or whatever you're into, man, I don't know, ballet, I don't care. And you have that day where you spend that day doing that thing that like sings to your heart, right? And then you go home, like how different do you feel on a day like that versus a day that's just like random crap that you have to do? Do you know what I mean? I want to try to find surrogate activities that fulfill that dog at that level, right? And I say surrogate activities because you can't, like if you get a dog, specifically Tug, we're talking about Tug today, so we're gonna get into kind of the fight expression. Mark, what's up? We're gonna get into the white trash coming out of me. What's that, dude? So we're gonna get into the kind of the fight expression of that, you know, list of biologically fulfilling activities. But it's like you can't let your dog fight. Do you know what I mean? But some dogs are turned on by conflict, and that's gonna be a real tough thing for people. So I'm gonna say a lot of challenging stuff today, so you'll have to deal with it. But some dogs are turned on by conflict. How many people think that's a bad thing to say, right? This is an abnormal room, because normally when I say dogs are turned on by conflict, I get a lot of people pissed. They don't think that's a cool thing to say. I don't mean that they're turned on by fights. I mean that they're turned on by conflict, right? The dude on the Harvard debate team is turned on by conflict. Like legit, like lawyers turned on by conflict. Like the dude that wants to play chess turned on by conflict. There's different flavors of conflict, right? Like one person wants to play chess, but doesn't want to play rugby. They're both conflict games, but one has a drastically different vibe and flavor than the other. But dogs all like a little bit of conflict on some level, just like people do too. How many people want to play a video game that's not hard? Like you want to play a video game that's challenging. You get turned on by things that are challenging. It's hard because you got to dig in and try, right? So we're all turned on by a little bit of conflict. The question is what flavor conflict do you like and that kind of thing. So what we got to do is we got to try to find an activity that spins the dials for the dog that's going to make it biologically fulfilled, that not only, it's not enough to me to say that don't cause problems, right? Like it's not just that Tug is a way to express that stuff without causing problems, because it can go much deeper than that. It's not just a way to express it without causing problems, it's a way to express it and build a bond. It's a way to express it and teach deference. It's a way to express it while they're developing self-control. So it's not just expressing it. What'd I do?
Your computer went to sleep.
What the hell, right? So, I'm gonna have to get, I should get should do my presentation in an e-collar. I think I would scare the hell out of people if I walked in with an e-collar. If I had one of those on, just freak people out. What'd you do?
I'm gonna move it down. I'm gonna give you some room.
I didn't even think I could breathe through my nose anymore. What's that? That sounds vulgar. I'm not sure that would have the effect that you're talking about. I'm not sure I don't know that would fall into the punishment category that we're discussing. All right. What was I talking about? Okay. Yeah. So it's not enough to just say that it's like, we want to give them a place to fulfill these things. That doesn't cause problems, because it's not just about not causing problems. It's about developing skills and relationship and management techniques that we're going to use throughout their life in all these other areas, right? So that's the lifestyle component. Clarity is the next layer of stress up. Clarity is a real big deal, and that's where we're going to have the biggest effect on clients, right? Clarity says every being needs to understand how to navigate their world successfully. That's clarity, right? And every being has a little bit of a different need. Like my wife has a different need for clarity than I do. And it's not because she's a coward. It's not because she's a chicken. She's a badass. Like she'll beat me 3 out of 10 times if we fought legitimately. Like she's a badass, right? We both used to fight professionally. We don't just randomly punch one another. Just in case you're wondering, relationship goals, who wins fights, right? I meant that as a good thing. So she's tough. She's super tough. So it's not that she's scared. She just needs more clarity as an individual, right? If somebody invited us to a party, I would just go dressed like this with what I have on me. And she'd want to know, like, why? Like, what? Is it their birthday? Like, do we need to bring food? What is everybody wearing? And I don't care, you know? So she needs a higher degree of clarity. If she doesn't have that clarity, she has stress when we go to that party, right? Until she gets there and she figures it out. Once she figures it out, she relaxes. But that's clarity. And everybody in here goes like, oh man, structure is a way that you give clarity. Like dogs need structure. How many people have heard that line, right? Dogs need structure. The deal is dogs don't need structure. Dogs need clarity. Clarity is one way to provide structure to your dog. That's a great way. That's why we use it in jail. It's why we use it on sports teams. It's why we use it in Cub Scouts and stuff. Like structure is an awesome way to give a being clarity, but it is not the only way. And the point to me is that if you believe they need structure, you'll never wean them off of the structure, because you're not going to wean a dog off of something they need, right? They need clarity. They don't need structure. Does that make sense? Right? Like the idea you put, I make a lot of penal system references because that's my background, right? I grew up in a bad way. So like, it's the same thing. You take somebody that can't function in society with clarity, you put them in prison, right? Ton of structure. And because they have that much structure, they stop getting in trouble. The goal would be to send them later at some point to a halfway house where there's half as much structure, but they're going to live with the same amount of clarity. And then they go to parole, which is going to have even less structure, but they should theoretically maintain the same kind of clarity. And then eventually they'll be free and they'll be at liberty with zero structure. In theory, if you did it right, they'll still maintain the same kind of clarity in their life and they won't be problematic, right? The problem with that system is that we kind of do it like dogs. We don't use structure to provide clarity and then slowly wean them off of that structure as they learn how to make better and better decisions at liberty. We use structure because we think they need structure, and then dudes never get out of jail, right? They get out of jail and it's like, okay, man, congratulations, high five, you're free. And then it's like, okay, which bus gets me to my PO? Where do you get your cable turned on? Just 2 more of those questions, I'm gonna punch somebody and go back to jail, because I understand everything there. You could use military when you're talking to your clients if it makes you feel better. You don't have to use the jail reference. I don't know what kind of clientele you're working with, but like, You could also say military fits nicely in that analogy as well, if you feel better about that. But that idea of clarity, like when I work in play with a dog, I'm not just making them healthy through giving them fitness activities, and I'm not just fulfilling their lifestyle parameters because I'm doing things that are biologically fulfilling to them. I'm also working on clarity. There's communication, there's language inside your play. If I take a dog and do zero obedience, I take a dog and teach them my games, like we're gonna do personal play, food play, like they're gonna learn a call to attention, are you ready? They're gonna learn enough, they're gonna learn good, no, okay, easy, leave it, like, and that's before I get to any positions and stuff. We're gonna learn how to communicate with one another through the gameplay, right? The next thing up is the leash. We're not gonna talk about that, totally different subject. If you need help with leash stuff, talk to Chad, he's the man. So that's a different subject for a different day, we're not gonna deal with it. But everybody knows like that's a giant layer of stress for most dogs, right? So this is the idea. That trigger layer is about that big, right? Look at it, like that trigger layer is about that big. The problem is you look at this and you go, man, my dog freaks out when he sees whatever, a clown on a unicycle or whatever, right? That they freak out at. And you go, okay, the problem is the clown on the unicycle, that's the problem. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start getting higher. I'm gonna have my decoy come out in a clown suit and learn how to ride a unicycle. And I'm gonna feed, or prong, or whatever I'm gonna do around the clown on a unicycle, because that's what caused the problem. He's got a clown on unicycle sensitivity or whatever, right? For me, the idea is this, right? Like for me, the idea is that. Before I ever work on an issue, like a trigger, before I ever work on like, how do you feel about that dog that you've been biting? How do you feel about the clown on the unicycle? Whatever the hell it is, I don't care. Like I want to smash all of the bottom layers of stress and then see what I have left, right? Like then see what we got left to work with, because that is well below threshold. And the level that you see of the trigger is exactly the same size. That's exactly the same size. The only thing that's changed is the lifestyle, clarity, and leash. And even if we hadn't changed the leash, that thing would still be under there. So for me, when I start talking about gameplay, specifically Tug today, but when I start talking about gameplay as training, I want to introduce games before I work on hard stuff, like before I work on triggers and issues, before I even work on obedience. I want to work on gameplay with a dog. Fitness activities makes dogs healthier, right? When I do my training, I almost always recommend that people give their dog a rub down. Where's Russell? Old school pit bull, right? Like we give dogs rub downs after training, right? It's bonding experience, conditioned relaxation ideas. You're also getting to check the health layer of stress when you're stretching your dog out and giving them a rub down after training. You're gonna see them do one of those every time you rub their shoulder. And you go, hey, what's that about? And then check that out. Could that hinky shoulder be one of the things that's causing the health layer of stress to be a little higher and causing some of these problems? Man, it might be, right? So for me, gameplay helps me work on the health layer of stress, the lifestyle layer of stress, and the clarity layer of stress to get that as low as I can. So then when I get to triggers, I might not have a problem anymore. Most of the time I don't. But if I do, we now have both of us. The handler has skills that they develop through training. You'll see some of that in a minute. The dog definitely has skills that they develop through training. We have shared language. We have deference. We have all these things that we can then use if we need to. If there's still a problem, and there's usually not, but if there's still a problem, we have all these skills and relationships that we've built to be able to deal with that. And on top of that, if we do run into a thing where we're gonna disagree and the skills and all the differential reinforcement, all that stuff's not gonna work, and it comes down to a because I said so, I'm sorry, but you can't. Like we're gonna get past that much faster because of the way that we approached it, right? Like my lady tells me to shut up, then I just shut up. You know what I mean? I go, all right. Like when somebody else tells me to shut up, I'm gonna slap you. You know? We don't have, you presume too much about our relationship. Shut your mouth. Like, so we have not played yet, so go away, all right? So anyway, that's the idea. Anybody got, if you have, maybe I shouldn't do questions yet. We'll do questions at the end. Write down your questions if you have something about a specific thing, because we're going to do a bunch of stuff. Does everybody understand this? Does this make sense? You see it? Feel free to use that if you want. Like a lot of people have. I take that and I print them both out and I tell people put it on your refrigerator. You know what I mean? And they just print it out and stick it on their refrigerator because honestly, you can give that to people and improve the way they manage and handle and train their dogs in a huge way. That one stupid image has a major effect on people because it helps them see the right thing with their dog.